Okay, so our next session is a little different one. Benedict actually had an idea to do a session like this in Dublin last year, at least for the first time in a Dev Summit context, and I thought it was a pretty neat idea. At least I did. So we're going to try to do a similar session here today for about a half hour. So I've called it a round robin session, and the basic idea is I have two chairs here, and we're going to have two folks talk with each other and just kind of have a discussion about whatever. It could be FreeBSD related. That might be kind of nice given the venue and probably a natural thing that folks will have in common. But it doesn't have to be. You could talk about the weather or how wonderful a city Ottawa is or something, I don't know. But whatever topics kind of come up, and then every 5 minutes, I'm going to have a timer on my phone or some other suitably annoying buzzer, and we'll swap out one of the people and do another person. So every person will get a chance to talk with at least two people and for about 10 minutes total. And then at the very end, whoever was the first person that I'm going to ask to leave, they'll come back in for the last slot so that everybody gets 2 slots. So the next thing is the schedule, and I've volunteered a few folks already in advance. So you know who you are. So if I could have Alexander and Alan come down, y'all are the first 2 contestants. And we'll do 5 minutes each. So there's your mic, Alan.
Is that one?
Well, no, I'm giving you this one.
Okay.
And
hello.
Have at it.
Hello.
Introduce yourself whenever you'd like to start.
You're first on the list.
I was going to say I normally start first, but yeah, still alphabetically. I'm first. Yay. My name's Alexander. I work at NetApp in the OS group. Been there for 15 years, mostly focused on FreeBSD integration into our operating system called ONTAP, but I work with Alan in that work.
Yes. So I'm Alan Jude. I work at Clara. We provide ZFS and FreeBSD professional services, including development and working with companies that are based on FreeBSD and trying to keep up to date and upstream things and all the fun stuff like that.
What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the first question that I prepped you on yesterday was just, are there things that the FreeBSD project could be doing that would make your life as a vendor consuming FreeBSD easier? I know the one we talked a little bit about was more consistent uses of the fixes tag in commits, so that we pulled in this commit and it broke stuff. Is there a commit later on that already fixes that? Or do we have to just figure it out, fix it, and develop our own fix and then find out, oh, somebody already fixed it later?
Yes. Yes. That would be very helpful.
In addition to that, are there any other things?
We've been having discussions around, like, you guys were talking about package base and all that stuff. We don't use packages at all. We build everything from source. I think we're not alone in that. But we build it using our own build system. I don't think we're alone in that either. So I do have a question for the room maybe, but you're here, so I'll talk to you. How do we continue to have a build system for FreeBSD that scales from the laptop to a build farm? Because I don't know how well the native FreeBSD build system, which is very mature, can do a lot, but it's also very complex and hard to parse, how that scales beyond a single machine.
So you're thinking like spreading it across multiple machines, or just scaling up to a machine that has 192 cores?
Both.
Yes.
Right, if you have a farm of machines with 192 cores, how quickly can you build it? And how quickly can 100 people build it all at the same time?
Yeah. That's interesting, and then you get into the complexity of trying to do things like Ccache and distcc, and
right, next level.
It gets all kinds of complicated. I don't know that I have a good answer. The build system's not really my specialty, but yeah, I think that's a good thing that we could maybe continue the conversation later about how do we advance that parts of the build system, and then like in your use case, have you looked at the newer stuff that came from the Cherry folks to be able to build FreeBSD on not FreeBSD?
I don't think we've looked at it. We use, so all of our build servers are Linux based, and so we cross compile everything. But then I have looked at all the latest developments in the BSD BMake usage of cross-building. And that's how we do any sort of internal upstream work where we're trying to contribute stuff back to the project. It all has to do the same thing, build on a Linux VM, test on a Linux VM before pushing. But I'm talking more just about the the cross-building distributed builds. So if Cherry has done a lot, then maybe I'll have to go talk to Brooks. No. Come on. Yeah, that's something that I think would be useful
Any other things on your wish list?
on my wish list. Ooh. More unicorns. I don't know.
All right, well, I guess now is your turn to ask me a question.
I thought I just did. What would you think about hosting a conference in Vancouver on the West Coast?
I'm not from the West Coast, but Colin is. And actually, the most helpful person organizing BSDCan has been Colin's older brother, Graham. So that's who we should talk to.
But Whistler in February.
Whistler in February?
Yeah, there we go. Dennis will be high to the event and low to the actual participation.
Yeah, and costs 10 times as much, Colin says from the back row. Definitely interesting to, we've also been having talks with other folks about, trying to revive the kind of ping pong we used to have with MeetBSD and VBSDCon with alternating between East Coast and West Coast, just to save people travel and to get, people that wouldn't come otherwise. So I think it's a good idea.
Time to tap out. So,
I'm stuck here.
We'll hear from Alex in a little bit.
So
Introduce yourself.
yeah, of course. I'm Bojan. I'm a source committer, FreeBSD source committer from Zagreb, Croatia, and currently employed at Clara Systems. So it's kind of like a company meeting, right?
Yeah.
No particular questions come to mind, so maybe we can continue where we left off with the last conversation. Or,
Sure.
yeah. Or maybe.
Well, I have one for you.
Sure.
If that helps you buy
Sure.
some time. So at AGBSDCon in 2024, you talked about your VM defragmentation work, and I was very interested in that. How is that coming along?
Stalled. Yeah, getting patches into VM is a bit difficult. It is the backbone of the whole system, of course. And measuring things, which is really important there, is tricky. And we kind of don't have a well-defined way of doing that, which is something that I personally like to see. So, in addition to a feature slash just test regression suite, something that measures performance regressions would be also really nice. Help immensely in performance-sensitive areas, I guess.
Yeah, I think having a kind of consistent way to measure performance of probably a couple of different workloads rather than just one even.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do you define what those workloads are?
Well, I mean, for starters, the usual thing is either a PGR run or build world or something like that.
Although those are more difficult to use as a benchmark because they will consistently change.
Yeah,
unless
exactly.
we're always building a PGR run of the packages from the January of 2024 or something.
Yeah.
Then and even that can have problems. And so, and then, there's other workloads we can think of, like the Netflix KTLS type workload, which is a good
sure.
workout for the VM subsystem. But yeah, how do we come up with a couple of those and have workloads that are going to give us kind of consistent results run to run?
Yeah. Fortunately, there are lots of. So in the academic world, usually there are preset sets of benchmarking suites that people tend to use. We could kind of easily integrate those, but then again, are we even hosting those types of workloads? Are they representative? In the end, you're only interested in a relative speed up or slowdown, right? That's what matters most.
Yeah, that's a good point, that it doesn't have to be a perfect benchmark for someone's
exactly.
workload. It just has to tell us, kind of similar to Olivier's NetBenches, thing. If we have a graph of packets per second versus version of FreeBSD, and we can see over time, hey, when somebody did this commit, it went way down or way up.
Yeah, exactly.
And, is that a good, if just because it got faster doesn't mean it was actually better.
Yeah.
But making sure that we understand why the performance changed
exactly.
By a large degree.
Otherwise, there's always this subtle paranoia that something you did is going to ripple out and just cause unpredictable things, which just happens all the time. So yeah. Maybe the other question that always comes to my mind, since I am a relatively fresh committer, and the way that I came into the community was, of course, through GSOC. It's always like the question that always comes back: are there any other, untapped sources of potential new people that we can take advantage of? I guess, for instance, collaborating with universities. Last year I mentored my last year GSOC student. His project ended up being his master's thesis, so it doesn't necessarily have to be funded through GSOC, right? Maybe something like that could be, done on a more like a formal, organized scale, right? Because I feel that it's vital to the project. In more than one way.
Yeah, I think leveraging more of the, when we do identify sources of potential new committers, easing that path and doing anything we can, whether that's matching with mentors or even, a scholarship at some point or something, to also try to solve the problem we talked about yesterday, and that kind of you just mentioned, that, we need like 4 VM maintainers, not 1, so that there's, people to review patches, and just that, we're all volunteers here in the end. Organizing BSDCan, we were very much trying to get to the place where every job has 3 people that know how to do it, so that if someone's out, that we can not be interrupted.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm taking Alan's mic here, and speaking of organizing BSDCan, Alan and I are the 2 money people for the conference, being people who can sign checks and also people who pull out our personal credit cards to put down deposits on the university. Last year it was mostly my credit card, this year it's mostly Alan's credit card. But if somebody else wants to join the conference team and offer their credit card, we would be happy to have 3 people doing this rather than 2. Now, you were talking earlier about benchmarking, and one thing I've started doing just in this past year is benchmarking in Amazon EC2. I can take that mask off right now. So one thing I started doing with EC2, because it's particularly relevant in the clouds, is measuring the boot time of FreeBSD. And so I now have graphs. Actually, I went back and used all of the weekly snapshot builds we have going back to, I think, 2018. And I have a graph on my website of how long it takes FreeBSD to boot on each of the stable branches and on head for every week from 2018 onwards. And you can see some big drops there. Around 2020, I was doing a lot of work on speeding up the FreeBSD boot, which I presented here. And then you can also see some places where it suddenly jumps. So sometimes it is for reasons that you would never imagine just looking at the source code. So one issue that I had to fix in, let me see, January of 24, FreeBSD suddenly started booting about 3 times slower in EC2. And so I started bisecting the commits, and I found, and each time I was bisecting, I was building a new EC2 image, an entire VM image to boot that and test the performance of that. And I tracked down the problem to a commit which bumped the size of the root disk from 5 gigs to 6 gigs. Now, there is no good reason why this should make things slower, but apparently this tickled something inside the Elastic Block Store system in AWS. And the solution to this was, well, if I bump it up to 8 gigs instead, then it gets faster again. I see John tearing his hair out. So yeah, it is very important to do these benchmarks, because you can't just assume that a commit will not affect performance. You really do need to measure things
Yeah,
because
exactly.
stuff may happen that you do not expect.
Completely agree on that front. Yeah. The other problem with all of these, the benchmarking suites tend to be unwieldy. Works with configuration and how to run them and whatnot. So, yes, something like the Linux test suite, having this in the tree or as a blessed but unofficial repo somewhere to the side, just having a way of, I guess, declaring a set of benchmarks you want to run in a config file and a set of, I guess, metrics that you want to track, just plopping them in and letting the CI runner do its thing would be something.
Yeah, and I think it is very important to have these tests done, have somebody in charge of running them every week.
Yeah, exactly.
To make sure that things don't regress, because it's one thing to have tests in the tree, but if people don't run them, it doesn't help us.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have the situation where some people are running tests and they check that their commits don't make anything worse, but then other people aren't testing, and then we find out months later, oh, something got worse. Whoever did it clearly didn't test, but because we weren't doing regular testing, it's a lot later now when it's discovered. So, yeah, it's good to have somebody running those tests regularly, and then they can either fix the problem themselves or yell at somebody or start bisecting commits to find out where it broke. But if somebody's one person or a team of people is in charge of making sure that the testing happens regularly. And ideally publishing it so that everybody can look at. But with performance, it's easy to have a graph, and if the line does not go horizontal, you notice.
Yeah, exactly. Decreasing graphs or decreasing overhead is also good publicity as well. So
Yeah.
Is it time to tap out?
Okay. It looks like Dan is coming down to replace you.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
We keep talking until he gets here.
Yeah.
So you're from Zagreb. So are you part of the team organizing your
of course,
BSD
of course.
this year? Yes.
I got roped into it, and I think 2023.
Right.
It's been going on for
Yes,
a little over a year.
I am hoping to make it there, but I am not very optimistic just because Zagreb is a bit difficult to get to from Vancouver.
Really? Okay, yeah. I mean, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, actually, getting to Zagreb isn't too bad. Getting home from Zagreb is more difficult.
Yeah. Probably 2 connecting flights, right? Or even more.
Three connecting flights and staying overnight somewhere.
That doesn't sound good.
The easiest option is to stay overnight in Istanbul, which is not my favorite place to stay overnight. So
yeah,
I'm hoping that something will show up in terms of good options. But if I don't make it to Zagreb, I hope to make it to EuroBSD the following year, which will probably be in Western Europe and probably be easier for me to get to.
Yeah.
Given the tradition of bouncing back and forth.
Probably.
Is that time?
Yep.
Thank you.
So speaking of conferences, of course, you ran BSDCan for 20 years.
Was it that long?
Well, the first BSDCan was 2004,
Yes.
and we took over from you in 2024.
Yep.
So I think that counts as 20 years.
So my name's Dan. I started using FreeBSD in 1998, I think, after I got DSL at my home where I was living at the time in Wellington, New Zealand. And someone, after I said I need a firewall, they gave me a CD and a 386 computer and said, here, install this. And so, trying to remember the guy's name. He worked for New Zealand Fisheries. That was my client at the time. But anyway, that's why we're here today. Mm-hmm. It's because of that guy.
And because you were in Ottawa at the time.
No, that was New Zealand.
But
That's how I got involved with FreeBSD.
But when you started the conference.
Yeah,
you were here.
but then I moved back to Ottawa and then started the conference because I was unemployed.
Yes. And then a few years later, you decided to run a conference and move to the States in, what was it, the same week, the following week?
I think it was about the same time, but I also started a second conference at the same time,
Right.
PGCon, around that
yes.
time. And so now I've been down in the States now for 17 years, so that means after the 4th or 5th BSDCan, I moved down there.
Right. But you kept on running it here.
Yeah, because people understand how complex it is to do a new conference in a new venue. An existing venue helps because you know all the people, you know where to get the stuff, and you can just do it year after year, and it takes a lot less time. Going to a new venue is a whole lot more work.
And I'm sure all the EuroBSDCon organizers here understand
yeah.
that because
Oh,
they
yeah.
go to a new venue every year.
Yep, yep. They also get new people every year. I remember PJD talking about running Poland, and that was a big job. I remember the conference in Warsaw, and I remember giving a talk at that conference about how to run a conference for 250 people on your own. I think that was Warsaw. I'm not sure. You can find it on YouTube. We can change the topic to something not about me so much, but something in general that everyone else.
Running conferences is both of us now because I'm part of the team running it now. and given the number of people who are involved now, I am amazed how well you manage to run it by yourself.
Well, thank you. The first year was such a relief when I stood at the podium at the closing session and people applauded. It was just like, oh, thank God it's over. But it was more along the lines of, yeah, okay, did a good job not knowing what I was doing. And it sort of got easier after that, but the conference also got more complex after that. So,
and it also got bigger. The first year, I think, was 130 people.
Yep.
And then it peaked around 200. I think 275 was the largest year.
And it was a few years before we got catered meals. Those came.
I remember going off for lunch, and the entire afternoon schedule was delayed by an hour because the lunch service was incredibly slow.
Yeah, because I didn't tell them we were coming. You learn. Those were good times, though. The first conferences were a lot of very good stuff that happened at those first conferences, despite the fact that we didn't have big-time sponsors like we got later on. Like, I don't want to name them because I'll forget some of the big ones, but the sponsorship funding allowed us to do things like food and allowed us to fly in speakers. PGCon, for example, there were speakers that could not afford to come to PGCon. They were located in Western Asia, and they just could not afford. But as time progressed, they could then afford. They had started up their own businesses, and they could then afford to pay for themselves to come to the conference, and they became sponsors. But yeah, you can't do it without sponsors.
Yeah. I remember my very first talk at BSDCan in 2005.
I remember that talk.
It was, let's just say Intel tried to get me fired over doing that talk.
I remember bragging to the people I was working with at the time there was going to be a big security revelation, and they poo-pooed it. Oh, wait, I'm Stan.
I think I need this. I'm terribly sorry for robbing you all of Colin. You're stuck with me now. For those of you who don't know, hi, I'm Christoph, and like Dan, I'm a recovering conference organizer.
Yes. It's a great skill, but not one to be practiced liberally.
Well, the recovering bit is an excellent idea. I will take credit for being smarter to run away faster.
Yep. The most interesting part of not running the conference is thinking about what you're going to do that weekend. Not this weekend, but like for the 6 months before the conference. You often come up to the weekend and, what do you want to do?
So why is there so little email in my mailbox? Why is nobody shouting at me?
It's a good feeling. I wanted to swing the topic around to something that is near and dear to my heart, and that's home labs. Computers in the basement, network, basement data centers. Do you have one?
Strictly speaking, no. I don't have a data center in the basement, but I do have a couple of computers in the office. I have a couple of Dell boxes with Chelsea 100 gig NICs in them. Every so often I will run traffic between them and do performance testing.
What Dell boxes are those?
They're Dell T640s, some Xeon something or other. Dual socket in one of them and single socket in the other.
One of the benefits of where I work is that the discarded, well, the e-waste servers are recycled, mostly to employees. And so I have a pair of Dell R730s in the basement, and I use them mainly to run dev tests and stage of fresh ports.
Yeah.
And it costs me, I guess, about $120 a month to run them. I'm pulling about 8 to 1,000 watts.
I get away with a relatively low power consumption because those Dell machines I tend to only turn on when I'm doing work with them.
Yeah.
And when they're idle, they're really not terrible, assuming I can believe the power estimate that the IPMI gives me.
Does anyone else have a home data center? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 14. So I'd say about at least a quarter. At least a quarter. It's a terrible habit. Once you start it, it keeps growing.
I just always told myself that I was not allowed to get a rack to mount stuff in. And I still don't have a rack. I bought tower machines, and that was the right choice.
I wish I had started in on rack mounted stuff earlier. I was just telling someone that the other day. It's just, it takes up less room, it takes up less space, and the hardware is cheaper because my employer.
Right, but you know, many of those reasons are exactly the reason that I don't get a rack, because I get too much hardware.
You don't have a need for old tape servers?
No.
I've got oh, okay. Anyone here use Bacula with Postgres? Okay, good. One of you makes a good choice. One of my lesser known contributions to open source was the first backend on Bacula for Postgres, and now it's widely used. And the second one on Bacula was the first test case for encryption at the client. And it was a very complicated ROT 13 implementation, but
it gets a lot more performant if you run it twice.
It's really easy. It was a very short patch, but it just proved that it could be done. Someone else took it and actually implemented a proper encryption solution.
What's that
It
law
slowed
called
it down
again?
terribly.
The best way to get the right answer on the internet is to
Is to
post
do
the
it
wrong
wrong.
answer.
Yep. So that's all I did. I can't think of any other contributions.
Well,
I've
thank
done
you for
that
your
was-
contributions to Bacula, because it is useful software.
Yep. This morning I've been figuring out how to add ZSTD compression, because at the moment it's not valid. It's missing a run depends and a couple of upstream patches to make the configuration actually detect and pick it up.
I should keep an eye on that, because better compression would make my backups faster.
Yep. This is compression at the client. So yeah, if you got a fast client, it should compress it and send it down. I do it at the server because I let ZFS compress all that stuff.
That makes sense, but one of the reasons I run Bacula is because it's network backup.
Yep.
My clients tend to be all over the place. And the moment that you have to push your data over the internet, your client is always faster to do the compression.
Yeah, that's fair enough too. Okay, thank you.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Hi, Christoph. How's it been?
It's been pretty good.
So I actually don't, I know that you work in networking space.
Yes.
I don't know how you started in the project.
Well, because it didn't work. So I'm sure most people know that I mostly do PF, but I started out doing FreeBSD, well, because it didn't work. I was interested in embedded development, mostly in Linux, and I bought a little embedded board, Marvel something or other. And, you know, build a Linux, install the Linux, it works. Okay, well, this is boring. So I had a friend who was really into FreeBSD. Okay, I'll try FreeBSD, and I build FreeBSD and eventually get serial output and it boots and all is well, but the network doesn't work. sure I can figure this out, and I did, and I'm not going to tell you how long it took, but I did figure it out. Those of you who are interested can go look at the MGE driver version history, and you'll find what is, I believe, my very first patch to FreeBSD. And eventually I started running PF at home and got really, really tired of it not understanding IPv6 fragmentation, and I had the worst idea I've ever had, which is I'm sure I can fix this. And I'm still not done with PF.
I stay away from networking. It seems hard.
So, yes and no. Is it Kirk who said this or George who said this, but playing in networking is much nicer than playing in storage. Because if somebody gives you a network packet and you throw it away, they'll just give you more network packets. But if somebody gives you a data block to store and you can't give it back to them, they get very upset.
I like that. That's good. When I started at NetApp, I was in the performance engineering world, developing APIs and interfaces to track performance of this software. And I think I was at NetApp for like 4 years before I realized we were running FreeBSD.
I mean, you know, it's just Unix. It's the difference is which side of the door you hang your coat up.
Nice.
So do you guys have ongoing performance measurements based part of CI?
Yeah, very well. I would love it to be part of CI. It's independent. We have highly, I mean, as you guys have talked about, right? There's so many variables that can go into the performance of a product. So we have labs that are dedicated to performance that are very well managed.
Yeah.
From the clients to the switches to the software and the way you initialize the software, and then all the different benchmarks as well that we would run. So there's push button, you know, automated weekly kinds of things.
Well, goes a long way.
It goes a long way. But if it takes 2 weeks to find a regression, then they have to bisect it. And
Yep.
The tricky thing is we also, as you know, we optimize the software by going through training runs and then taking that data and optimizing that, you know, compiling it with all the counters. And if you detect a regression on the optimized build, and then you have to go through the whole process to bisect it every time, it takes a long time. So
Yep.
you find a regression and then you start testing on the non-debug, just, you know, not fully optimized or training optimized. You end up sometimes not finding where the problem was introduced because it was introduced during optimization.
That sounds painful.
Yeah.
But, well, having something to find them is really, really useful. We used to have really nice network performance benchmarks. And then Netflix went and hired Olivier, so now we don't get them anymore.
Sounds like opportunity.
Yes, I'm talking about you. No, I remember looking at several benchmarks. I know that at one point Olivier did bridge benchmarks, and our bridge performance was very, very sad. And I eventually wound up doing something about that, and now it is less sad. I'm not sure if it is particularly great right now, but it is, you know, at least less sad.
We want to trend in the right direction, even if we never get there. Right? Perfection
yes.
being the enemy of good.
Well, yes, that is a common thing that I find myself coming back to is, this is an improvement. Let's just take it, even if it's not perfect. I think that's I think John is about to kick us out.
There it is. Thank you.
Thank you to all our folks. And in particular, we had it was an accident that I picked almost all conference organizers, so I didn't mean to do that. But hopefully, just hearing different folks talk and having different topics, maybe you have some ideas of people to go bug and talk to offline if there was something that struck your interest. And I think we'll keep doing this. So if you didn't get voluntold this time, you might get voluntold next time if you keep coming. So I don't know if that's a feature or a bug.